Hello, everybody. Welcome to Just One More Podcast. This is episode 15, October 23rd, 2022. I am Jeff from Just One More Level, and we obviously have John from My Brain on Games. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing swell.
So, this is the last recorded podcast before Star Ocean: The Divine Force. And
Wait, you didn't get your pre-release copy from Square Enix?
Nope, I did not. I did not.
Brother, I've been playing it for 30 hours.
Well, I guess we can go ahead and just turn this episode into a review. So,
No, just kidding. I don't have. Neither of us have that kind of pull, that kind of sway.
yeah. I mean, I wish I did. That would be kind of cool to have games before release.
Honestly, didn't think about it, but probably should have just asked.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it never hurts to ask.
Yeah, never hurts to ask.
But so we're reaching that deadline. You have already cleared up Star Wars Jedi last week. I am still working on Yakuza Like a Dragon, but I guess before getting into what I've been playing, did you complete anything last week?
No.
No.
I did, speaking of Star Ocean, though, I did double check my pre-order through Amazon, and like what we said last week, I think it wasn't slated to arrive until like November 14th, and I have no idea why that was. So I was ordering some other things on Amazon. I thought, well, let me go ahead and just pre-order another copy and see if I get it, release day. And actually, no, I was looking at the page, and it's like, hey, purchase now, for delivery on October 27th. It's like, okay. So I did that sometime last week, and it's still saying October 27th. So I think I'm just going to, cancel my original pre-order and get the game on day one like I was supposed to.
That is a very weird. Like I don't know how that logistically happens. Like it's the same game. They're both pre-orders, but one is like 2 weeks later than the other.
And it's the one that was pre-ordered much sooner. So I don't know if maybe I often do the delayed shipping just to get like the $1 or $2 in digital credits. So I don't know if I did that whenever I pre-ordered it originally and just wasn't thinking that, well, hey, Jeff's going to be getting it day one. I need to get it day one as well.
That's well, from I wanted for the most part I wanted to like have a full day to play it, but that didn't pan out. So, and I actually didn't realize that it didn't pan out until right before we started recording. I was like, wait a minute, I'm off Monday and Wednesday this week. Then I looked at the calendar. I was like, Star Ocean comes out on the 27th.
A Thursday.
Yeah. So
now, are you getting it in store, or are you getting it shipped to you?
I did pre-order it through Target because they had a couple like stackable deals. It was like, I think there was like a 10% off like video game thing, and it included pre-orders as long as it wasn't PlayStation pre-orders or Nintendo pre-orders. So the Xbox Series X version of Star Ocean, I could pre-order and have 10% taken off. But if I pre-ordered the PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 4 or the well, yeah, I guess those would be the only other versions to pre-order. Those were not included in that 10% discount. So pre-ordered it through Target for the Xbox Series X. And then on top of that, had the red card to take an additional 5% off. So now with Target, they're saying launch day to the following day for delivery. So
I guess that's just a long way of hinting at that you got it shipped, to answer my question.
Oh yeah. So yeah, the long form.
Thanks for the 30 seconds of backstory, and I think the answer that you ordered it to get shipped to you.
Yeah, so it's all about the context. You gotta have the context so that you understand the story.
Okay. Well, yeah. So I mean, that should be on my doorstep come Thursday. Um, I don't know that I'll have a ton of time to play it that night nor Friday, and honestly, not even really the weekend. But
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I mean, I don't think
Yeah,
I don't think either of us are going to really be able to like sit there and just dump like 12 hours into it anytime
yeah,
soon.
yeah. Because that's I'll be working 10:30 to about 8:30 that day. At 10:30 in the morning to 8:30 at night. So for the most part, not a whole lot of time because then I have to turn around and work 8 to 5:30 the following day. So yeah, but I guess we'll see. I guess we'll just see how the energy goes.
Yeah. So I fixed that. But then as far as stuff I played this week, just Ease Memories of Celceta. I started that last
Yeah.
week. I think I'm up to like 8 hours or so into it, and I think looking at how long to beat last week, it was like a 20-hour game to complete it, maybe 30 for full story plus, kind of more like in line with what I would be doing. So I mean, there's a chance there's a solid chance I could still beat it by the time Star Ocean comes out, but I don't think that will happen. I'm not putting
Yeah.
a ton of time into it on a daily average.
Well, and that's kind of it's kind of what I've been running into with Yakuza Like a Dragon. Like as much as I love the game, I just don't have enough time to be able to really sink into it. And with recent promotion and stuff, like my schedule has been all over the place. I'm hoping within about a week it'll settle down to where I can actually play games. I mean, the fact that we have a podcast where we talk about the games we're playing, and I haven't really been able to to utilize very many of these episodes to talk about the games I'm playing. You've been doing a lot of the heavy lifting over the entirety of this podcast.
Yeah, I've been doing lots of reps.
Yeah, that's carrying a lot of games. So,
But yeah, I
but
mean,
yeah,
Ease. Let's see now. Have you played a Ys game before?
uh, not for very long.
Probably just like dabbled with like Ark of Nepishtim or something on the PS2.
Yeah, just kind of like popped it in, checked it out. Um, I feel like I've got some of those games, but I
Yeah,
honestly
you
don't.
probably have a couple on the PSP, I imagine.
Yeah.
This one, I've played. This is my second Ys game I've played. I played the first one. Played Ys, Ancient Ys Origin. No, Ys Origin is a different title. It's like Ancient Ys the Wanderer. I don't know. I'm mixing up titles because like
There's
like
so
all
many
good
of them.
like all good RPGs, some of them have some lengthy and great subtitles. But I played Ys 1 on the Sega Master System, and so that's a real dated game. And so it even controlled kind of odd, but it was really good. Great soundtrack, Yuzo Koshiro, Penn's soundtrack. So it is quite different to go from that one to this one. But this game's awesome. I like action RPGs. This is an action RPG. It's kind of button mashy, but it's fast paced. And it's probably button mashy because I'm playing on easy. There is actually a difficulty toggle. And looking at trophy guides, kind of figuring out how I was going to play it. Easy is suggested for kind of like a first playthrough if you're going to go through for the platinum. I won't go through for the platinum, but at some point maybe I'll come back to it later on. So I'm playing easy, and it's kind of a cakewalk. Some portions have had some bosses that are maybe a little more challenging, but yeah, it's just fast paced. The skills are pretty cool. Like, maybe it's just because I'm playing on easy, but there's a skill gauge. Whenever you attack enemies, it fills it up. And if you go like 2 or 3 seconds in between attacking enemies, that next hit is going to fill up the gauge a lot. So you can really just hammer off your skills. And one thing that additionally helps is that if you kill an enemy with a skill, it basically replenishes that skill gauge to what was drained from that attack. So there are points where it seems like I could literally just do nothing but like special attacks. Just like special attack, special attack, special attack.
So you would so that you're not going to go for the platinum. What are some of the trophies like? Are those like are they typical like JRPG like insane trophies, or is it just like time consuming trophies, or
No, it's
kind
pretty
of a combination of both?
It's pretty reasonable. So I mean, there's the standard like story related ones. I think there's like
Yeah.
8 or a dozen of those, basically just for making standard story progression. And then there's sort of collection trophies, which are often common to RPGs, like hey, fill up the bestiary, collect every treasure chest, complete every side quest. The ones of note for me are the missable ones, and that's really the kind of the only most of the research I like to do ahead of playing a game, especially like this. It's like, okay, well, let me go see if there's missable ones. Like, what are the ones I have the chance of screwing myself on? And so this game has like a half dozen missable trophies, and I actually printed off basically just a little FAQ of, okay, here's the missable ones. And so that's the one thing that I go back to every now and then and check off, like, okay, there's one for like this informant sells information at certain points in the story, like 8 times throughout the story. You can return to him and he'll have a new piece of information to buy. So I've just got that little numbered bullet point list where I just say, okay, I got to this town, that triggered a new thing for him. Let me go back to that starting town, pay him the 100 gold, get it, and just check that off. So that's kind of a helpful reference for me to A, not miss any of these trophies, and then B, just kind of know where I am in terms of beating the game. And that has kind of helped me forecast that. I probably won't beat it by the time Star Ocean comes out, but maybe I'll get close.
And so as far as like buying this information, does that like is it like useful information, or is it just like filler information?
No, the information's terrible.
Oh, okay. Well,
no, yeah, it's not.
I was like,
it's not pertinent information. It's just a trophy related to, hey, basically you purchased all of this guy's information.
Okay, because I was like, I mean, that would be a really cool feature if it's like, okay, you're playing through the story, and if you never buy this guy's information, you get a certain type of ending. But then if you did play through the game and you bought like half of his information, maybe that changes the ending or changes how things develop. But so it kind of sounds like it's just kind of for fun.
Yeah, and there's a couple of trophies like that. Like there's some person who tickles you, same sort of thing at certain points in the story. If you go back to her, she'll tickle you. Like all Ys games, you play as Adol Christensen, stark red hair adventurer, and in this game, again with its subtitle "Memories of Celceta," it makes sense after you played a little bit because he has amnesia.
Oh well, that's a completely new feature for these games.
Yeah, I've never played an RPG where the main character had amnesia.
Like, I'm glad that they're keeping it fresh. Like,
and so Celceta refers to like the Celcetan forest, I guess. This big, massive forest that a little ways into the game you are tasked with, or you sign up for charting, basically mapping this supposedly untraversed forest. And coincidentally, you actually just came from the forest, and somehow you lost your memories. And as you explore throughout the forest and other villages inside the forest, you come across these little like memory points where you see something from the past. And what's cool is it's not just from the past in reference to this game, but also in reference to other Ys games, I believe, because I think this is situated in between like Ys 3 and Ys 4. So, there is other adventuring that Adol has done before now. And so there are some throwbacks to him as like a youth where he got his drive to become an adventurer and some of the stuff like that, which is pretty neat.
So wait, like all of the Ys games have a like connected story?
Yeah, now don't hold me to that because again, this is only the second one I've played, but it's always been my understanding, you play as Adol Christian and he is the protagonist in all the games. And yes, they are, it's not kind of like a Zelda where there's some story connections to them. It's like, no, there are direct connections. Like this, 3 goes into 4, goes into 5.
Because that's one thing Um, like obviously, like my favorite franchise of all time is Final Fantasy, but um, I like the RPGs that have like a fairly super interconnected story in between games. So like the Xenosaga games with episodes 1 through 3. Um, just love those games. Two, the fact I mean, I like 1 and 3. 2 doesn't allow you to do a whole lot of actually playing the game, um, but just like having such a connected story. It's one reason that I wanted to get into like the dot hack games, because like the dot hack I think those are not like the best narrative, but it's just like it continues on. Like game 2, game 3, game 4 you're still playing as those same characters as they're going through.
And what always seemed cool to me about those games in particular was like that save transfer, kind of in the Suikoden sense, where it's like, okay, like because you are playing the same characters in the second dot hack game as you were in the first dot hack game, like if you have that memory card to save, well, all their levels and skills come over too.
Yeah, and like the Legend of Heroes, or the most recent arcs that they've had, I like Trails of Cold Steel, and I think or yeah, Trails of Cold Steel and Trails in the Sky. I think like those games. I think one of them has 3 in the arc, and then there's another one I think Cold Steel has 4, but it's like you get to see these characters develop as you're playing these games, and it's like, yeah, you can hop in at any point, but if you play through all of the games, you kind of get that continuous story. You get that world building and just seeing how things evolve over time, and so the fact that the Ys games might be potentially more connected than I thought definitely increases my interest.
Yeah, and it makes sense with Adol being an adventurer. Like, well, yeah, of course he's going to go find these new lands and have these new experiences. Like that's what he wants to do.
And so,
and the characters I've come across have been all pretty entertaining. Like, kind of a fun localization, fun script. It is an action. It is really just an action game with some RPG mechanics, leveling up, equipment, crafting, stuff like that. But it is really, it really hits me right, because I'm sitting here like mapping this forest out, and there is an actual like percentage counter on how much you've mapped. The characters, for the most part, it's almost like you always have a party of 2. You basically got Adol, and then you have Durin, this guy who says he's known you for a long time, that he's your pal, he's your good buddy, but he's also seems like kind of money grabby, money hungry. And so, of course, this is a task that you're assigned with the intent of actually making money off of it, so that's why he's in. But he seems like maybe a little shady, but he's a genuinely good guy. And then so far throughout it, like I said, I'm 8 hours in. I've gotten some third-party members related to like the villages I've been to. Like, oh, and it's a common refrain, Adol's returned to this village 10 days after being here originally, and everyone wants to kill him. And so it's kind of a mystery, yet they're unraveling of, well, what happened? Why does everybody think you did the bad thing? And how can we prove your innocence? Yeah. And it's generally, well, let's go find the person who did it. So at those points, you're getting basically someone from those villages to join your party. And I think later on, they'll actually join your entourage permanently. So at most, you're roaming around with 3 people and just going through the forest, just like mashing the attack button, mashing those skills. And the AI partner's doing the same. Tons of drops, money, crafting materials. Like, there's a little ticker on the left-hand side of the screen that's showing everything you pick up, and it's just going a mile a minute sometimes, especially for my playthrough, since I'm getting so many like skill kills. I'm finishing enemies with these skill attacks, and when you do that, there are more items that drop. So it's just a constant ticker of, you got this, you got this, you got this.
Well, I mean, does it seem like there's going to be a large party, or a large potential party, or is it just
and that's one thing. Looking at the trophies, there are trophies for like playing 5 hours as each individual character. So you can switch between any characters in your party freely, and they all have different weapons and fight different. They also have different, unique, like on-field actions. Like Durin, Adel's is just recovering the memories. So whenever you come to like one of those little memory orbs, you interact with that and have a little flashback. Durin's is unlocking locked treasure chests. He's a thief, or he has a lockpick skill and stuff, something like that. Two of the other characters I've come across, one whenever you're swimming, there are these like little fractured walls that he can poke with a spear to break, and those are usually involved at this point, it seems like, in dungeon puzzle solving, basically changing water levels in places. So they all have their unique weapons, but also their unique little like actions to do. So dungeons have some sort of a little bit of puzzle solving, minute puzzle solving.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of Octopath Traveler, with each of the characters having their own like specialty that they can do, whether it's like robbing somebody or buying a special item from one of the NPCs, or I can't think of his name, but the one guy who can just like pick a fight with somebody and just you're randomly fighting this NPC. So it's cool when games allow their characters to have like personality to them, where they've got like their own like set of skills. I guess Wild Arms is also a little bit like that too.
Yeah, I think if we break down, pretty much most JRPGs are like that.
I guess
a big band of characters. They're all somewhat unique.
Yeah, that bring different things to the table, and I guess what I was thinking of is just like outside of combat, being able to do
like on field or dungeon actions.
Yeah, because like that's I think just kind of a really cool thing with really fleshing out characters, to be able to showcase that, hey, these are our people. They've got their own specialties, their own things that they're really good at, and outside of combat, you can do this and this and this with XYZ characters, and but
yeah, and another thing, thinking about it, this game has really rockin' soundtrack, really like high tempo soundtrack. Like almost every place I've been so far, whether it's a town, a village, or like dungeon or the forest, it's all just got just like fast paced music that just have me sitting there like almost banging my head like, okay, yeah. Kill monsters.
Well,
explore the forest.
One thing that I've really gotten more and more. I mean, I love Uematsu's music with Final Fantasy, but like a good soundtrack can really help. Like if the gameplay is just okay, if the story is just okay, I feel like a really good soundtrack can help like get you to the finish line. Whereas with like a bad soundtrack, because like I remember thinking back to Streets of Rage 1 and 2. Like I love those the soundtracks with those games, like all of it, every single track on those two games, just amazing, just really gets you amped up and ready to go, and just next stage. And then we played Streets of Rage 3, and I absolutely hated the soundtrack for that one. So much of it was just like taking like nails and just dragging them across sheets of metal, and I hated it.
Yeah, I mean, Streets of Rage 3 soundtrack is of course not as classic as 1 or 2, but whenever you actually do some reading on the background of how Yuzo Koshiro and I think Motohiro Kawashima composed it, like they were really like avant-garde. Like I think a lot of it's like
something.
I think a lot of it was like maybe automated, like kind of not AI driven, of course, because I don't think artificial intelligence was to the point where it could do something like that back then. But it's like quasi AI driven, or just some sort of automated process where a lot of it was not necessarily composed directly by them. It was maybe more a little bit indirectly. Like they'd feed some things into the computer and it'd come back with some stuff. And then, of course, they'd probably edit it and tune it up.
Yeah. But, it's just a good soundtrack can add so many, just it adds a great layer on top of a a game.
Yeah, and it's especially true for JRPGs because often these are generally they're 30 to 60 hour experiences, maybe longer, maybe shorter, but they have lots of different places you go to. So there's opportunity for lots of different themes, lots of different instrumentation. And so that's always one of the fun things for me with a JRPG is coming to a new one and then thinking, oh, that's a track I'm going to have to download whenever I'm done with this game. Like, whenever I finish one of those games, like, okay, well, let me go back. Let me listen to that soundtrack again and see like, oh, this is a song I like even removed from the game, or this is one that really has like strong evocative memories of this particular town.
Well, it's also like you and I, we can listen to various Sonic soundtracks just on their own because they're just so good. Like they're great in the game, but they still can stand on their own. Just like if we're driving around checking out mom and pop game shops or something, like just randomly listening to some tracks from any of the Sonic, I'd probably say any of the Sonic games. Like it's just one of those like obviously in the early days of video games they couldn't do the most with the music, so like they're fairly limited with that, but like as technology and the hardware has gotten like more and more advanced and just more and more capable of handling things, it's cool to see or hear just how soundtracks just continue to evolve. That's I was actually at work today. I was talking with one of my I think my HP rep, and like I love Final Fantasy, so obviously I love Uematsu and what he did with the soundtracks and stuff for Final Fantasy. Just masterclass music. But then like after he stepped away, like the games after like Square Enix started to kind of change how the they didn't really have like their golden team anymore. They they were pulling people from various different development houses inside Square Enix and like trying to but the games just didn't have the same like level of soul and personality to them. Like there was just it felt like there was things missing, like with 13.2, Lightning Returns. I mean, even with a good portion of the soundtrack with 15, like it's like okay, I mean it does the job, I guess. Like it gets you to a point. It helps push you forward, all that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I mean, I'd say it's kind of indicative of more modern games generally. Like I
guess just more cookie cutter.
Yeah, not necessarily more cookie cutter, but just more aiming towards more of a cinematic score, like proper orchestras and all that. And at that point, it all starts to sound real generic to me. It's all just like, okay, I can't differentiate this from a movie soundtrack. I can't differentiate this from any other like big climactic action game soundtrack. We mentioned on here multiple times where it's like, hey, give me a PS2 era JRPG with like those outlandish cartoonish visuals and the outlandish cartoonish soundtrack. Like again, like what I just mentioned with like JRPGs, like you have with so many villages and dungeons, you have the opportunity to make like really standout, unique tracks. And so by the time you finish this 60-hour game, a lot of times you have like a 2-hour soundtrack of like 50, 80 songs that almost all sound unique. Whenever you start getting to the orchestration stuff, it all just starts to sound samey to me.
And that I can't remember. I think Corey and I we were watching a review, I think, of Xenoblade 3, I believe, or Xenoblade 2. I don't. I think it was a Xenoblade title. It was just like maybe a month ago. But it was like, oh, this like in the review they put a spotlight on the soundtrack. And they were like, oh, this is a really like this is probably my favorite track of this game. And then Corey started looking it up and was looking at the soundtrack for I think Xenoblade 3, and it's like 200 plus songs.
Yeah.
And so many of them do sound very similar to each other. Like obviously there was a bunch of like standouts.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at that point, you're working on a lot of lay motifs, but Xenoblade in particular, like I think I was talking to him through Facebook. The soundtrack for the first game is fantastic. It's like, I forget, it's like a 2 or 4 disc soundtrack, something like that. So there's just tons of music, and there's like tons of places you visit in the game, and the songs are all so great. Like that, the battle themes especially, done by like Ace Plus, the composing unit Ace Plus, are just really rocking. And then you have all these different themes and different instrumentation for the rest of the stuff for the places you go to. Xenoblade X was a far cry, because that was done by totally different composer, totally different feel, still a great soundtrack, just more in line with an anime, which is where the composer hailed from. He had done a lot of work with animes, and that was the feel that the director of the game wanted. And to be fair, I've not played 2 or 3, so I can't speak to those soundtrack qualities, but I know a lot of the returning composers returned for them.
Well, and like, for me, Final Fantasy X is like super near and dear to my heart. And I remember getting the remaster for the PS3, and I think with the PS3 remaster, they didn't include the original soundtrack. Like, so you had the rearranged, they like adjusted or whatever. I can't remember the term for it.
Arranged.
I guess arranged soundtrack, and it was like it was cleaner, it was crisper, but it also just it felt like it lacked, or that it lost the soul of the original game. And then of course they did the remaster where they brought it to the PS4, and obviously I got that version too. And as I'm playing through it, I switch, like I would listen to the original soundtrack as I'm playing, and I would be kind of testing both of them out. And just the original one from the PS2 era, just the original soundtrack, it's just a little muddier, it's just a little dirtier, it has a little bit more personality and soul to it, that it does a better job than this arranged version that kind of
it's the vinyl of Final Fantasy X soundtracks.
Which I never thought that it would make a difference, but it really does. Like, people who, like, I've heard people talk about, listening to music on vinyl, just hearing that crackling, just hearing, it sounds more authentic. It sounds more just like there was a person behind this and not just a machine. But yeah, like that it's very much like having that original Final Fantasy X soundtrack and then having the arranged one for the PS3 remaster. It's like it really changes the experience as well, and it's hard to explain without like somebody
of course,
going through.
For someone in your position, that's perfect too at the same time, because you've played Final Fantasy X a number of times. Now you could come to it with a different feel, a different experience.
Yeah, and it just, I mean, and I like the first trailer that came out for Final Fantasy 16. Like, so far, so much about 16 seems like it's having that perfect storm. The team behind it just seems to really be like at the top of their game right now. Yoshida's doing an amazing job. Like, he put together a really good team. But one thing that I was always wondering is, how was the music going to live up to the lofty ambitions or the lofty credentials of Uematsu, and just, for me personally. And with that first trailer, hearing, I can't think, I don't know what his first name is, unfortunately, Soken.
Masayoshi.
Who, he basically took over, well, he not basically, he took over Final Fantasy 14 soundtrack, which is just ballooned to an insane soundtrack. And he's been doing a lot of like remastering of old Final Fantasy music, because over the last like 3 expansions, they've been adding a bunch of like, well, now we're going to have a dungeon that's themed after Final Fantasy IV. We're going to have a dungeon that's themed after Final Fantasy XII. And he's been going through and reworking the music. And he's doing such an amazing job of not destroying the original, but still having his own personality to it. And it still feels like it's an instant classic, like an instant masterpiece. But like listening to his original stuff for Final Fantasy 16, like he is killing it right now. The trailers that have been released, I am so excited to go through this journey. And so far from what I've seen and just the snippets of the soundtrack that is with these trailers, like I've gotten my hopes up before with this franchise, and I know that I'm aware that I have felt like the era of Square Enix is like, oh, we're in a good era again. Like this is a good era, and I've been burned on that. But I really feel with 16, like so much just seems to be lining up. So far the music in the trailers for the soundtrack sound great. What they're doing visually and with the most recent trailer, like how the story seems to be shaping up, like I am so excited for that. And who knows? I like Soken could very well be carrying the baton for Uematsu into the modern era of Final Fantasy games. Not quite sure how the tangent got onto soundtracks, but you were saying that Ys has a great soundtrack.
Yeah, that's how I got on there.
So.
Yeah, and so that's basically been all I played. And I guess, judging by that lengthy tangent, you probably have not played much Yakuza in the last week.
I unfortunately have not. I've put in like another hour or so, but I got caught up doing a bunch of side quests, which, I guess for the most part, since I'm enjoying the game, it's not a bad thing that I'm getting caught up on the side quests. I know that Star Ocean is right around the corner, and this game has already been put on the shelf a couple times. So I really want to finish it before Divine Force comes out, but that window is shrinking.
Yeah.
But I like I said, I did put about another hour or so. I'm going to try to get some more time in tonight to finish up chapter 10. For the most, like I got caught up in side quests that were getting materials to make better weapons. So it's not like the time was just wasted and running around doing menial side quests. Like I was actually going and getting stuff to make to craft better weapons. So for the most part, like I love the game. It's great. So yeah, I did do a couple matches of Smite over the last week. Just that evergreen title there. But speaking of evergreen titles, a great segue here.
It's always a great segue when you call it out.
Yeah, like it's good to put a spotlight on things. That way people know.
And now for this seamless segue.
Yeah, I'm great with the transitions. For as far as your evergreen title, with Pokemon, I saw. I guess in November they're going to begin like the phasing out of support for it for Sword and Shield.
Yes.
So I saw that.
Yeah, I think right now they're doing one last battle competition, basically no limits. So bring anything, fight with anything, get your battle points, get your rankings at the end of it. They've also done they are doing currently a special max rate battle. They've done these basically since the game's launch, like every month, every other month. Generally, there's like one special max rate event from like a Thursday through a Sunday with the opportunity to catch a shiny Pokemon. Or there was once before where it was structured like this one, but this one you'll fight Glastrier or Spectrier, like two of the legendaries or mythicals that were introduced in the Crown Tundra DLC, and they're super tough, and unfortunately you can't catch them. So that's the downside to it. They did this once before with Mewtwo, where I think you and 3 other people went into these max raid battles and fought like a super powerful Mewtwo. You couldn't catch them, but you got amazing rewards. And so in this case, they're giving away some super hard to get items, like ability capsules, rare candies, some other things, some other items that are really good for breeders, or just for somebody who had a Pokemon that maybe had an ability, a hidden ability, that is better or really desirable, but the Pokemon you have just has the regular ability. Normally, you'd have to spend a bunch of time to earn the points to unlock these like ability patches, or if that's the name, there's 2 different types, to change that Pokemon's ability. This game, Sword and Shield, introduced a lot of things to make it easier to not just have to breed Pokemon to get these special things. They introduced a lot of things where it'd be a little time consuming to get the items to change the nature or change the abilities, but they're there. So in doing these, if you can successfully beat like the Spectrier or Glastrier, you're going to get some of these items. And then I think like in one last hurrah, they're also doing a couple Pokemon distributions for it. Right now, there's a distribution code at GameStops here in the States to get a Genesect and a Volcanion. And then starting next month, I think like the first week of November, a Marshadow distribution event is going to be held at Target, which is only like the second or third time that Marshadow has been distributed. So I know I have a friend who that is basically the last Pokemon they need for their living decks. And I let them borrow mine just so they get the Pokedex entry, get it complete. But they've been just wanting, craving a Marshadow. So whenever this distribution got announced, they're like, hell yeah.
Finally going to have that complete before, another 100 Pokemon get added to the...
Yeah, exactly.
Just to start the whole cycle all over again. But like I'm wondering, so with Scarlet and Violet coming out, I know there's Pokemon Home being able to like just transfer the Pokemon over, but I wonder, like, because I know with like Sword and Shield, there's and even with transferring things from like Pokemon Go, there's a bunch of Pokemon that have things that can't be transferred into like Sword and Shield because of either like skill sets or traits or whatever, or maybe there's like an item that can't be brought into Home that can then be brought into something else. But
yeah, so I mean, whenever you transfer Pokemon into Home, they don't come with their items. So items wouldn't be the case. There are excuse me.
You okay with it?
Yeah, I think kind of like what you had maybe a month or so ago, like a lingering cough. I've just got a lingering cough where there's like mucus that forms in the back of my throat, and I like do 1 or 2 deep coughs like that, and I cough it up. I release that mucus, and then in another like 30 minutes or hour or so, it comes back.
And it's back.
Yeah, which I think I'm like at the end of it. I think yesterday and today is kind of the best I've been dealing with it. But
like I really hope, I wish you the best with that.
Yeah. But no, so I mean, items don't transfer whenever you put a Pokemon into Home, but there are moves that are no longer able to be used, or I thought that was the case, like no longer able to be used, or maybe no longer able to be used in specific ranked competitions. Because whenever you go to Cerebi and look at, here are like the egg moves for this Pokemon, here are the moves they learn by level up, TM, all that sort of stuff, then you can look at transfer-only moves. And so there's often a lot of moves for a Pokemon that, if you went to the move tutor in Fire Red and Leaf Green, like a Pikachu could know this specific move, and that was the only time they could learn that specific move. So theoretically, you could go fire up Fire Red or Leaf Green, teach a Pikachu that move through the move tutor, and then move it up through the generations into Sword and Shield, and it would still know that move. Now, I don't know if you could use it in competition, because it was always my understanding you couldn't. But then you go to like Smogon, like a competitive kind of wiki of sorts, a competitive website, and you'll often see move sets that give Pokemon those transfer-only moves. So it's like, okay, I don't know if that's just specifically for Smogon purposes, because you can do battles through there, or if it's also like for help in like actual competitions, building teams that way. So items, no, but moves, yes.
So for the most part, I'm well, I guess I kind of answered that pretty well. But it'll be interesting to see how long they support Scarlet and Violet, because at some point Nintendo will have new hardware, and I would imagine that it's within like a year or two. I would imagine that they would have something new coming, because I mean the Switch is getting up there in age.
Yeah, I bet they'll have new. I wouldn't be surprised if they show new hardware next year and it comes out in 2024.
Because like we are, let's see, the Switch came out in 2017. Is this the first time? Well, no, maybe not. I was trying to think of, is the Switch the first generation to have two completely brand new generations release on it? Because I know. Well, okay, so the DS had Diamond and Pearl and Black and White. So it doesn't happen very often, but just the fact that they are like Sword and Shield came out, and then
I guess every time since the DS, because the DS had Gen 4 and Gen 5, Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Black, White 2. 3DS had X and Y, which was the 6th gen. Sun and Moon are considered the 7th gen, plus Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. And then, so it's basically been every time since the DS.
Okay, I guess it's happening more frequently now, but so that kind of throws that out there. But I'm curious if Nintendo, shows off and then they bring out new hardware. Like, I wouldn't imagine that there would be a quick turnaround on a brand new generation. Like if Scarlet and Violet are coming out this year, I mean Sword and Shield. When did Sword and Shield come out? It was like 2018.
2018. I mean, you'd think that, but Game Freak worked on Legends Arceus, and then they also worked on this, which is coming out the same year. And Arceus is considered a mainline game. It's not considered a spin-off. So,
what?
I mean, you'd think that there wouldn't be a quick turnaround, but I don't know how big Game Freak is. It's probably in two different teams working on that. There's going to be some overlap, I'm sure, but I guess never say never.
I'm just hoping that with whatever Nintendo is doing next, that backwards compatibility is in the engineers. Like,
I think with the Switch, they'd almost have to, just on how popular it was. I mean, it's the same thing whenever you go back and look at the Wii. Like, they made the Wii U backwards compatible because the Wii was such a huge seller. Kind of the same with, I guess the Game Boys. I guess, they got burned initially whenever they released the Super Nintendo, and there was some outrage that it wasn't backwards compatible. And, on the console front, they really didn't care again. That did not hit them too hard until, I guess, the Wii, and they thought, I guess the Wii was backwards compatible with the GameCube. That's kind of the outlier.
Yeah.
But, I mean, with the Wii especially, it's probably like whenever you're designing the success for it, it's like, it needs to be backwards compatible. I imagine they're looking at the Switch the same way, where it's like, well, our next big thing will still probably be, a handheld console mix. And if we do that, it'd be hard not to incorporate the Switch. Like, it'd be hard to say, hey, here's the same sort of device, but it's not backwards compatible.
Yeah, because I don't know what the current numbers are, but I think they're just a couple million units away from surpassing the PS4, which the PS4 I think is sitting at around 117, 118 million units. so like the fact that they're within just a couple million of that, most likely at the end of this year they will have surpassed the PS4's numbers, unless they just don't ship anymore.
Yeah, they just say, hey, we're done.
Yeah, we're calling it quits right here. So going into the next generation, you're looking at 120 million plus people. And now, granted, some people have multiple, 2 or 3 probably.
Yeah, I mean, that's often the case with a lot of consoles that start reaching those astronomical numbers.
Well, yeah, but when you're thinking about it, that's still a number that Nintendo would have to look at and be like, okay, we can't really.
Yeah, we can't not do that.
Yeah,
and then in terms of Pokemon specifically, at this point, I think there's, kind of no turning back. I mean, they've made them backwards compatible ever since the Game Boy Advance era, 20 plus years ago. And especially with the Pokemon Home application now and the kind of cross compatibility of Pokemon Home. Like, okay, not only is it on our Nintendo platforms, but we actually have it as a phone app. And hey, everybody has a smartphone. So, I mean, at that point, there's kind of again, same sort of thing. It's kind of like you can't not keep making the Pokemon games interface with home. Yeah, they may not have that compatibility right at launch or even for a couple months afterwards, but they're going to have it.
Yeah, because, it was a little bit of a well, maybe not. I've been out of the Pokemon space for a little while, but it was Pokemon Bank, the transition from Bank to Home.
Correct. Yeah. Bank was the 3DS application, which again, kind of a sign of there's no going back. Like, the 3DS eShop and the Wii U eShop, but the 3DS eShop is going away. Pokemon Bank was a subscription service. It was like $10 a year, $8 a year or something. In recognition of the eShop going away, Nintendo, Pokemon Company have made that free, and it will still always be obtainable. So they're basically saying hey,
that's good.
There's always, because that is how you get those Pokemon from the Game Boy Advance games, the DS games, and even the 3DS games into Pokemon Home and into your Switch games. That is the funnel they have to go through. So them acknowledging hey, the eShop's going away. We had been charging for this. It's no longer a paid app. It's free for everyone. We're going to make sure this stays up. So there's always going to be, at least for the foreseeable future, a way for you to get those old Pokemon into new Pokemon.
Yeah, because I was kind of wondering how they were going to handle stuff like that, because I know that in some cases I think there's now I'm kind of drawing a blank on it, but is there any potential chance that a Pokemon gets stuck in Bank or Home? Like, do you know of any situations like that?
Yeah, I think
where
I want to say there are some Pokemon that maybe you could put into Bank, but you could not transfer into Home, and I think it's a real specific Pokemon. There's always the case from games of the past where they were basically stuck to that version. Like there was always some special Pikachus you couldn't bring up, and some other special one-off Pokemon like that.
Because I feel like there's, I don't know, for some reason I've got this memory, and of course my brain's going, so maybe I'm just completely misremembering. But I feel like there's Pokemon that I've put into Bank that I couldn't take out of Bank, and I also couldn't put them back into the original game because of them being transferred out, or there wasn't a way to get them back to their original game or something.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that instance.
But it's just it would definitely suck to you've moved all your stuff into Bank, and then you stop playing Pokemon for a while, and then you're like, oh, you know what, I kind of want to go back to that, and then you go back to it, and then can't even access Bank, and it's just all gone. All those Pokemon are gone. I really wish that there was a way they would allow for an actual game to house all of your Pokemon, so that it's not just on a server somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Pokemon Home is that. Pokemon Home has space for like 4,000 Pokemon.
It's not enough. With all the different like variations and stuff, like it's not enough.
I mean, it is enough for all the different variations. Even with all the variations, you're still hitting like 1,300 or something.
I mean, like the variations, the shinies, some of them are like seasonal.
No, I mean, this
like
is not a problem for you though. You're just arguing it to argue it. Like I actually am approaching that limit. I've got 3,000 plus. Now, of course, now I've got a lot of excess where I need to just at some point, I'll go in and cull and say, okay, well, how many Pikachus with this nature do I need? I only need one. So let me go ahead and get rid of all the worst ones. But then it gets a little more complicated because then you're also looking at, well, this nature, then what about this nature, this ability, and does it have any egg moves or any other special reasons to keep it?
Yeah, and
then you wind up with 3,000 plus Pokemon.
And you're looking at the stats and stuff. It's like, well, this one's faster, but this one's stronger. This one can take more of a beating.
Yeah, which as that evergreen game, I have put a little bit of time into Sword and Shield in the last week.
That's well, I mean, you've spent like the last 2 years just like pretty much just breeding, like just hatching eggs, riding your bike in circles just to get to get that perfect.
Yeah. The last thing I had done was there were 2 things I had done last, and at this point it had been a long time since I played last, but I had bred a bunch of Gorgeist and Pumpkaboo, and they evolve into Gorgeist. And the thing with those is, speaking of variations, they also have size variations. So there's a regular one, there's a large one, a small one, and an extra large one. Well, I did the crazy thing. I did the full Monty and actually bred 8. God. I bred 2 of each size. That way I could have like 1 regular Pumpkaboo, 1 regular Gorgeist, 1 extra large Pumpkaboo, 1 extra large Gorgeist. So I had a bunch of those, and I'd already done that breeding by the time I came back to it a week or so ago. And then same thing with Pikachus. I had bred some Pikachus, or actually, I think in Pikachu's case, I just had enough because they always give them out, and I'd gotten a lot through like special trades or random wonder trades. That I was like, okay, well, I'm picking you to be my Raichu of choice. I'm picking you to be my Pichu of choice. So I had bred a couple of those, or at least got them ready. Basically, maxed out their stats, maxed out their EVs, their IVs, took them through the Elite Four, or actually the Galar tournament in this game to get their little badge.
Well, and in a couple of these episodes, we've talked about just the you've got an addiction to Pokemon.
Yeah.
Having to collect them all.
Yeah. At this point, I am now gearing up.
I'm literally all.
I'm kind of drawing the FAQ on the Eevee family. Those are the next ones chronologically in the Galar Pokedex, and I bred 2 early on in playing that game. I think I bred like an Espeon and maybe like a Glaceon just to help with max raid battles. So now I'm going back through and like, okay, well, what do I want in my Flareon? What do I want in my Vaporeon? And basically selecting the nature, the ability, the movesets, and trying to get that stuff all planned out.
How many evolutions? There's 8 evolutions.
I think so, yeah. Because there's 3 from the first generation, the 2 Espeon, Umbreon from the second generation, the 2 from Diamond and Pearl or Black and White, where they introduced Leafeon and Glaceon, and then Sylveon from X and Y.
When they introduced fairy type Pokemon. I'm kind of surprised that they haven't just taken like an easy out and just added another evolution, because like Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet.
Scarlet and Violet, so far we haven't seen an evolution. Maybe there will be one.
Like there's still types out there. Like there's Steel type,
Tons.
Dragon type, Poison, Bug. I don't really know how a Bug evolution would go.
Yeah, there's some where it's like, okay, theoretically at some point there should be one evolution for every type, right? And then you get to the point where it's like, what is a Bug Eevee like?
a flying Eevee, a ghost Eevee, Although a ghost Eevee might actually be kind of cool.
Yeah, that'd be pretty. Maybe not too difficult.
But yeah, so I mean, so for the most part, like trying to get Yakuza done before Star Ocean comes out. The evergreen titles for both of us, Smite for me, Pokemon for you. You said you're probably not gonna put you may not finish Ease before.
Yeah, I mean, never
Divine
say
Force?
never. Just thinking, like looking at my little cheat sheet over here on these missable trophies. I'm maybe like a third of the way through some of them, and in terms of like that strictly story-based hour count, I'm maybe like getting close to halfway through. So I mean, I could beat it by the time Star Ocean rolls around, but I don't think it's going to happen. But I wouldn't be surprised if I beat it by the next time we record. Because even though I start up Star Ocean, I'll still probably put some time into this. I'm not just going to drop it.
Yeah.
I will at least beat the story of this.
Did you say how many hours you've already put into? Celceta?
Yeah, I'm like 8 hours into it.
Okay, so for the most part, like with the next episode of the podcast, we'll have possibly a game beaten, and
yeah, I mean next episode of the podcast is gonna be the Star Ocean podcast.
Yeah, the start of that journey, which I'm excited for. I mean, the last four or five episodes of this podcast have heavily been about Star Ocean.
Yeah, it's really gonna suck if we. I mean, we've played the demo, so we know what the game is like. We've already set our expectations for what to expect, but it's gonna suck if we get it. It's like actually, this game really
this
sucks.
Is bad.
Yeah,
we were really excited and like going for doing streams and stuff with it, and then wound up just not liking the game. But I'm hoping that's not the case. Like I'm really hoping that we don't have to backtrack on anything on that. Like I'm hoping that everything goes smoothly, and that it turns out to be a good game. Which Square Enix, I think we had talked about in one of the previous episodes, that the demo is kind of a chopped up. It's a curated experience, which leads me to believe that they tried to omit things that could be story related that they didn't want people to know about beforehand.
And it could just be that there's a it's a JRPG. There's going to be a lot of story info dumps early on. Maybe there was just a lot of that, and they wanted to increase the action, increase the flow for the demo.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if I can say that I will beat it no matter what. But I'm certainly going to try to. I'm going to try to beat the game.
Yakuza or Star Ocean?
The Star Ocean.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Like I intend to beat it, and I'm just saying that I don't know if it would be an experience that I'd be able to say that I will beat it no matter what, because I've played Star Ocean: The Last Hope and never finished that, and I haven't touched Star Ocean 5, but everyone talks bad about it.
Do you have a copy of 5?
Yes.
Okay. What we need to do after we play through Star Ocean 6, then we need to go backwards
and play 5.
Yeah, well, because I want to play 4. That's backwards compatible on the Series S and X, and I guess the Xbox One too. But it's backwards compatible on a platform we have. I want to go back and play that sometime. And let's go back and play 5 while we're at it. We can go back retroactively through the series.
And then once we're done with 5, we can dive right into 4, because you've got it, I've got it.
That's literally what I just suggested.
So, I mean,
thank you for listening.
Sometimes I zone out, but and then that leads us to playing Till the End of Time, which is the best in the franchise, and we've got 60 to 80 hours to throw into a game we've already played and beat. So I think this is a good journey, a good thing to do.
Well, let's at least go back through 5 and 4, because those are both going to be new to us, or relatively new. Yeah, because we both played 1 through 3. And I guess by that
So,
virtue, then we'd actually have to play Blue Sphere, the Japan-only Game Boy Color release.
which was that like a? I mean, I'm sure we can find like an emulated version
Emulated,
of that.
emulated copy. Screw that. I've got the actual cart.
Well, isn't it isn't it like region locked or something?
No,
Like,
Game Boy Color was region-free.
oh my God. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. Was the DS region? Yeah, I think basically Game Boy all the way up through the DS was region-free.
so was it just like the
It-
N64 and GameCube
Well-
that were region locked?
Well, even then, GameCube was, because that's disc-based. That's a little harder to get around. But the N64, I think the region locking related to N64 and even Super NES, Super Famicom, it's just a slightly different looking cart. I think it's really just a physical tab that you can just like cut off, and you can play a Japanese N64 game on your N64 or a Japanese Super Famicom game in your Super Nintendo.
That kind of that kind of reminds me of the toilet seat that you got for the PS2.
Yeah, the
You know,
top
it's
loader.
just like these weird little very. It's like, well, you can't have a with the slimline PS2, with the cover that it comes with. If you take that off and you put a little toilet seat looking thing on it, then it can play non or just any region
Yeah,
games.
then it tricks the game into thinking that the disc is still going, and you can stop it and pop it out and do what you need to do. But I tell you what,
just weird.
speaking of the PS2, I was talking about playing Suikoden,
Oh, yeah,
playing
you got-
Suikoden Tactics. A couple episodes ago, brought that CRT over, and so in that process, I just Googled some stuff about PlayStation 2 or whatnot. I tell you what, I have the Reddit app on my phone. I never really use Reddit. I'd never use Reddit, but every now and then, like actually a couple times a day, it'll pop up stuff like, hey, here's some subreddits you may be interested in, and it's basically just looking at my search history, because now I'm getting all these like PS2 and PS3 subreddit recommendations, and of course I click into them, so it just makes it worse. It feeds me more of them, but they're talking about their modded PS2s, or it's like Europeans showing off their PS2 collections.
That's just it's feeding the beast.
Yeah.
It's all the algorithms behind the scenes that are getting you to collect more data. You got to have more of it.
So anyways, we'll see about me modding my fat PS2 next. I don't know.
I mean, that's we have a world of games to play, and such a limited amount of time to be able to play them. So obviously, we need to make it harder on ourselves to get access to more stuff. So yeah, I think with this, I think I can go ahead and call it. I'm probably not going to beat Yakuza before Divine Force comes out.
Oh yeah, I mean,
so that would be kind of like a.
I made that bet a long time ago.
No, well, you're going to make that
Yeah,
money.
unfortunately, the odds weren't that great. So I bet $10. I'm only going to get 11.
No, well, I mean, you got to be in it to win it. So, but yeah, so I have been Jeff, or I am Jeff. I don't know. I'm still really bad at ending things. Also bad at transitions too. So I'll continue to work on that. But I'm Jeff from Just One More Level.
And I was John from mybrainongames.com.
And you will hear from us with episode 16 of Just One More Podcast, The Star Ocean Begins podcast. See ya, everybody.
Bye-bye.